Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I recently got into recreational target shooting as a way to deal with stress from my job as an aircraft maintenance technician at the Air Force Base. After doing some research, I decided to start small with an air rifle to practice my aim before investing in anything more serious. This led me to visit the Exchange, basically a Walmart on the military base, during my lunch break to pick up some supplies. The Exchange was pretty quiet that afternoon as I browsed through their hunting and sports section. I found a decent Crosman air rifle that seemed perfect for a beginner like me. After making my purchase, I headed to the food court to grab some lunch before heading back to work. I was almost done with my meal when a young kid, probably around 6 or 7, approached my table. He asked if he could see my air rifle pointing at the box beside me. I hesitated but agreed, carefully setting the boxed rifle on the table while keeping it within my reach. After looking at it for a few seconds, the kid demanded to have it. I quickly refused and put it away, explaining that it was mine. The kid started throwing a tantrum, shouting that he wanted it. I told him no again, explaining that it wasn't a toy and that he wasn't old enough to own one anyway. The kid threw a tantrum for a minute before storming off. I noticed 2 Air Force Base police officers getting lunch at Panda Express, sitting a couple tables away from me. I finished my meal and got up to throw away my trash. When I returned to my table to collect my things, that's when the real trouble started. A woman who could only be described as a stereotypical entitled military spouse came marching up with the kid trailing behind her, crying. I asked if I could help her, and the kid immediately pointed at me, identifying me as the person who had refused him earlier. The woman gave me a look that made me roll my eyes. The woman demanded that I give her son my air rifle. I refused, reminding her that I had already told her son no earlier. She accused me of being selfish, claiming I didn't even need it. I pointed out that I had paid for it, and it was mine, suggesting she could buy her son one from the store if he wanted one so badly. She angrily responded that she had checked and they were out of stock, then demanded again that I give mine to her son. I refused once more and tried to leave, telling her I wasn't in the mood for this. I tried walking toward the exit, which happened to be near where the base police were sitting, but Karen jumped in front of me and grabbed at the box containing my air rifle. Pure instinct kicked in. I yanked the box back while simultaneously pushing her away with my foot. She stumbled backward and fell, immediately starting to shriek like a banshee. Her kid began crying even harder as the 2 base police officers rushed over. One officer demanded to know what was happening in a booming voice. The woman, still on the ground, immediately accused me of assault. I explained that she had tried to steal my air rifle and I had acted in self-defense. She shot back with her own accusation, claiming I had stolen her son's air rifle and she was just trying to get it back. The second officer helped her up while keeping her at a safe distance. The first officer asked me if her accusation was true. I denied it and offered to prove my side. I pulled out my receipt, debit card, and military ID, handing them to the first officer. He checked everything carefully before returning them to me, confirming that the receipt matched my name and apologizing for the trouble. I assured him it was fine. The officers then turned their attention to the woman. When they told her she needed to come to the station for attempted theft, she completely lost it. She started screaming about her husband being a captain and threatening to get the officers in trouble. The first officer pointed out that they had witnessed everything that happened. When they handcuffed her, she continued screaming about her husband's rank and how they'd all regret this. The officers escorted her and her still crying kid away. Later that day, I learned from a colleague that her husband, who was indeed a captain, was called to the station. The base commander got involved, and she ended up being banned from entering any base facility without her husband present. Her husband also faced some uncomfortable questions from his commanding officer about controlling his dependents on base. I returned to the Exchange an hour later to exchange both the rifle case, which was too small, and the air rifle, which wasn't quite what I expected after testing it. The customer service rep who helped me with the exchange had already heard about the incident and couldn't stop laughing while processing my return. I'm a 17-year-old guy who's been dating my girlfriend for about 2 years now. She's amazing, super into fitness and gaming like me, and we both share this weird obsession with horror games. She even built her own gaming PC, which is pretty impressive. My girlfriend's dad was turning 45, though he honestly looks way younger. He decided to throw this big birthday party at their house and thought it would be the perfect opportunity for me to meet all the extended family I hadn't met yet. I'd already known her immediate family and grandparents, but this would be my first time meeting all the aunts, uncles, and cousins. The party started off pretty normal. Everyone was gathered downstairs, and we were about to start opening presents when we heard this blood-curdling scream from upstairs. My girlfriend and I rushed up to check what was happening. We found her younger cousin playing Five Nights at Freddy's on her expensive gaming PC without permission. If you don't know the game, it's this absolutely terrifying horror game series that can make even adults jump out of their skin. My girlfriend immediately questioned why he was on her computer and reminded him that we were about to have cake downstairs. The older cousin who was watching tried to defend himself by explaining that he'd attempted to stop his brother, but the younger one had insisted he was bored. My girlfriend told the older cousin to go downstairs, mentioning that their uncle probably missed them. The older cousin agreed immediately and left. The younger cousin refused to get off, complaining that his uncle was boring. My girlfriend tried to handle it diplomatically by offering him a deal. If he got too scared or died in the game, he would have to come downstairs. The younger cousin confidently agreed, claiming he might never come down. I had to hold back a laugh because this kid couldn't even figure out how to use the in-game cameras properly. We knew it wouldn't take long. We went back downstairs for the cake and presents, and the kid eventually joined us before heading back up to play. We checked on him periodically to make sure everything was fine. Then suddenly, screaming, like horror movie level screaming. My girlfriend called up to check if he was okay. The younger cousin, looking pale, mumbled that he was fine and suggested we all go downstairs. As we walked downstairs, his mother, who I'll just call Karen, came rushing over, frantically asking if her baby was okay. My girlfriend explained that he was just playing a horror game on her computer. Karen initially expressed relief that he wasn't hurt, and I added that he was fine, just spooked, and mentioned our deal with him. That's when things took a wild turn. Karen suddenly started yelling, demanding to know why my girlfriend even had a computer. When my girlfriend asked for clarification, Karen went on a rant about how my girlfriend should be planning her wedding and thinking about having children instead of wasting time playing games. My girlfriend pointed out how ridiculous this was, reminding her aunt that we were minors and questioning why we'd be thinking about marriage or kids. This set Karen off even more. She started screaming about how my girlfriend was talking back to her in what she claimed was her own house and declared that my girlfriend was grounded until she learned some manners. I jumped in to point out that this wasn't even Karen's house. It belonged to her brother, and that she had no authority to ground her niece. Karen then turned her anger toward me, banning me from seeing her niece or entering what she claimed was her house, threatening to call the police if I didn't leave immediately. What she didn't know was that my girlfriend's dad was already on the phone with the actual police. She just stood there pretending to call them on her phone, probably thinking she was being really convincing. My girlfriend's dad shouted at Karen to learn some manners herself, or he'd kick her out. Karen insisted he couldn't do that in her house, to which my girlfriend's dad had to remind her that he had bought the house and this was literally her first time visiting. They kept arguing until we heard police sirens outside. Karen's face went white. She tried explaining this ridiculous story to the police that kept contradicting itself. Something about how it was her house, but these people were trying to kick her out of their house. It made zero sense. She actually tried to physically attack some of us when she realized nobody was buying her story. The police arrested her right there. I said happy birthday to my girlfriend's dad and goodbye to my girlfriend after making sure she was okay. Later, we found out they got a restraining order against Karen. She can't go anywhere near any of them now. She could technically still come near me, since I wasn't included in the order, but she doesn't know where I live or anything about me really. She's facing assault charges and isn't allowed at any family gatherings anymore. Guess she learned the hard way that you can't just claim other people's houses as your own and try to control their lives. I've been working at Walmart for about 2 years now in the stocking department. The store management actually treats us pretty well, compared to what I've heard about other locations. I just finished my evening shift around 8 p.m. and needed to grab some groceries before heading home. After picking up everything I needed, some bread, milk, and a few other essentials, I headed to the checkout line. There was an older gentleman in front of me who was almost done with his transaction, so I waited patiently. That's when this woman and her kid, probably around 8 years old, got in line behind me. While waiting, I noticed a display of lighters near the register. Being a smoker since my teenage years, not my proudest habit I know, I figured I might as well grab a pack since mine was running low. That's when everything went sideways. The woman behind me suddenly spoke up in this shrill voice, demanding to know what I thought I was doing. When I asked her what she meant, she told me I couldn't have the lighters. I explained that I was old enough to buy them, but she immediately accused me of lying. I tried to tell her I was 20 and offered to show my ID, but she just kept yelling that I was lying. I started reaching for my wallet to prove my age, but there's something important you should know. As a Walmart employee, we all carry box cutters for opening inventory. Mine was clipped to my belt as usual. When I moved my hand toward my back pocket for my wallet, this woman completely lost it. She started screaming about me having a knife. I tried to explain it was just my work box cutter and my hand wasn't even near it, but she kept shouting that I was lying to everyone. By this point, the cashier had already called both the police and our store manager. My manager rushed over, looking concerned. He demanded to know what was happening, and the woman immediately screamed that I had tried to cut her and her baby. I tried to explain, but she kept interrupting me, screaming that I was lying. I suggested to my manager that we review the security cameras, but he said we'd only do that if absolutely necessary. That's when the police arrived. 2 officers approached our checkout lane. They asked what was going on, and my manager explained that the customer was claiming I had tried to cut her. The woman went ballistic at the word claiming. I tried explaining that I was just reaching for my ID because she didn't believe I was old enough to buy lighters. My manager backed me up, assuring her I was old enough. The police asked if I had threatened her, and I explained that I had just gotten off work, which was the only reason I even had the box cutter. Thank God for our cashier, who finally spoke up and told everyone that she had witnessed everything and I hadn't even come close to grabbing the box cutter. The police said they would review the camera footage. They put me in handcuffs, talk about embarrassing, and took us to the security office. They put Karen somewhere else, thankfully, while 1 officer stayed with me. After reviewing the footage, they quickly released me and apologized for the inconvenience. That's when I decided I wasn't going to let this slide. I asked to press charges against her for harassment and false accusations. You should have seen her face when the officers told her. She started screaming even louder, if you can believe that's possible. Her kid was just standing there looking mortified the entire time, probably wishing they could disappear. The officers ended up charging her with filing a false police report and disturbing the peace. I later found out she'd been banned from our store. My manager was super supportive throughout the whole thing and made sure to document everything in case she tried to complain to corporate. I still work there, and occasionally my co-workers joke about my attempted assault with a box cutter incident. At least we can laugh about it now. I've been in the car sales industry for over a decade before switching careers, and let me tell you, I've seen every trick in the book. My co-worker at the restaurant where I now work is a young guy, maybe early 20s. He's a shift supervisor making about $10.25 an hour, usually getting around 30 hours a week. Good kid, but definitely not financially savvy. One day he comes to me completely stressed out about this new car he bought. He told me he didn't know what to do, explaining that he could barely afford to eat after paying for this car. When he showed me the numbers, I nearly choked. $795 monthly payment, and $400 for insurance. The kid was only making around $1,230 a month total. Something wasn't adding up. I asked him to show me all his paperwork from the dealership. He brought everything the next day. I went through it carefully, and while they definitely ripped him off with warranties and add-ons, nothing seemed illegal at first. But then I noticed something interesting about his finance application. I asked him if he had filled out his income information correctly on his application. He confirmed that he had put down exactly what he made. That's when I knew I had them. No bank would ever approve a $795 car payment for someone making $1,200 monthly. I dug deeper into the paperwork and found what I was looking for: the application the dealer submitted to the bank. They had listed him as the general manager of the restaurant making $70,000 a year. Bingo. The next day we walked into the dealership together. The sales manager gave us that typical car salesman smile and asked how he could help us today. I told him he would want to get his general manager because we needed to discuss unwinding a deal. The sales manager laughed and said that unwinding a deal wasn't something they did. I assured him that he would want to get the general manager. The general manager came out all confident and dismissive until I laid out the evidence. I showed him both applications side by side. I explained that this was bank fraud, a felony. I pointed out that my friend made $14,000 a year, but their finance department told the bank he made $70,000. I gave him the choice of doing this the easy way or the hard way. The general manager's face went pale. He said he would see what he could do to make this right. I told him it was simple: unwind the deal and give back the trade-in. The general manager admitted that, unfortunately, they had already sold the trade-in. I responded by saying they would need to give him something equivalent or better. The general manager offered a 2007 Focus with slightly higher mileage. I shut that down immediately, explaining that he wasn't understanding the situation. I made it clear this wasn't a negotiation. They had committed fraud. Either they made it right or we would walk straight to a consumer protection attorney. The general manager tried arguing that he was giving him a free car. I corrected him, pointing out that he was replacing the car they had fraudulently taken and already sold and profited from. I asked if he wanted to explain to the bank how they falsified the income. My co-worker was getting nervous, but I knew we had them cornered. The general manager kept trying to lowball us until I started getting up to leave. The general manager quickly stopped us, saying he had a 2008 Honda Civic with slightly more miles, but it was a better car than the trade-in. I told him he was finally thinking clearly. They drew up the paperwork, unwound the original loan, and my co-worker drove home in a better car than he started with. The dealership had to eat the loss on the new car since it was already titled and would have to be sold as used. Later that week, I heard through some old contacts that the general manager had launched an internal investigation into their finance department. Apparently, this wasn't the first time they'd pulled a stunt, but it was definitely their last. The finance manager who falsified the application, let's just say he's no longer in the car business. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.